tem tido um enorme sucesso junto das nossas comunidades. E porquê? Porque traduzimos-la para inglês, são em inglês, e portanto as pessoas que já não falam português, ou que falam, mas não leem em português, sabemos que há muitos assim, um, podem, obviamente, seguir as crónicas todas as semanas. E eu tenho recebido muitas notas de gente de várias partes dos Estados Unidos, é no na nossa plataforma Filamentos, que têm dito: nós gostamos porque é uma crónica que se lê brevemente, não vou levar 1 hora e meia a ler este texto, levo 7 ou 8 minutos a ler, 10 minutos, e aprendo muito sobre os Açores além da acessibilidade. Portanto, convido-vos, na realidade, a seguirem os filamentos e a verem, portanto, e a lerem estas crónicas do Dr. José Andrade, que, aliás, estão a ser apresentadas também em língua portuguesa, que ele escreve, obviamente, originalmente, nos jornais, de alguns jornais da nossa diáspora, principalmente no Portuguese Times, de New Bedford, na Luso Press, salvo erro, no Canadá e em outros órgãos da comunicação social da diáspora e também, portanto, dos Açores. E aqui, através do Filamentos, todas as semanas, temos uma crónica, portanto, como eu disse, do Dr. José Andrade. Vamos passar então para a nossa próxima parte. José Luís, isto tem sido uma maratona hoje. Muito obrigado por me teres acompanhado. We're going to switch to English right now because we're going to be having our next participants. And from 12 until 12:40, more or less, 12:40, we're going to have folks from the Luso American Education Foundation. We have already one on that we'll be bringing on as a panelist, and that's Brad Angeja. And after Brad, hopefully others will join, or else it'll be a quick, but we can talk for 40 minutes with Brad. However, it will be a quick synopsis of the Luso American Education Foundation. All vice presidents were invited, I should say this. All vice presidents were invited, all directors of different committees or projects that the Luso American Education Foundation is carrying on were also invited, because we wanted to reserve a space of about 45 minutes or so to indeed bring folks who are involved in the foundation, who are directors of the foundation, and who have certain projects that they're working on. We have one, and that is Brad. Thank you so much, Dr. Brad Angeja, who is a cardiologist in San Francisco. Hopefully, we won't need the services of the cardiology, but just the services of the intellectual and the writer and the community activist. So we don't need your services today. Hopefully,
hopefully not. Yeah.
But thank you so much, Brad, for joining us. We
Of
appreciate it.
course.
We hope we'll have a couple more people. If they do, we'll bring them on as panelists. If not, we're going to start with you anyway. Um, and so tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, in a few minutes, how you became involved with Luso. I know it's been part of your life forever. Um, uh, and um, and how you transitioned to Luso American Education Foundation, because I know you've also been involved, as we've talked in a prior session, prior years, with the Luso Financial and the Luso Fraternal, that part of the youth parts, and all those things that are important part of Luso. But now you have a very active role in lots of different ideas that I think are important for the foundation. So a little bit about your involvement and how you transitioned to the foundation, if you don't mind.
Sure. So I've been privileged to be on the board for the last couple of years, and I'm the chair of the fundraising committee. So that's my official role. Of course, on the board, we all kind of brainstorm and come up with ideas and activities as best we can. But my official capacity has been trying to come up with new ways and advance the prior ways of raising money, so that we have money for the programs, for the scholarships, for the summer camp. And so that's been my focus the last couple of years. I got on the board a few years ago because Bernice Pelicas and I were talking, and she said, "Boy, we could really use your help." So I just accepted the invitation, and it's the first sort of leadership role I've had in the organization. You mentioned, yeah, I did grow up. I was dancing in the youth council, and my mom was involved with the on the clerical secretarial side for the foundation for quite a while. My dad sold life insurance for United National Life when it was called that decades ago. So a lot of people knew my parents, and then it's nice to get a chance to give back a little bit. So that's been my role.
And so, how is the role in charge of all the money, bringing the money, I should say?
Well, I at first it was a chance, or I was trying to learn about how successful and how to do or help with the golf fundraiser. So the Pelicas Rosario golf fundraiser has gone on for, I think it's something like 27 years, and uh, Bernice and Diane and Armin Pelicas and a whole group do a disservice trying to. I'm sure I'll forget if everybody is involved for almost 3 decades. But just that's a pretty big endeavor. And so a few years ago, I started helping out on that, and just trying to continue the success that others have already started. And it's a good group. Generally, we do it every September, and the things that we've done the last couple of years a little bit different is try to use some online auction. So instead of just doing the auction in person, and I think people, the people are so good about coming to the tournament, and they open up their wallet and they'll buy some raffle tickets, and they're quite generous. But I will admit it's hard by the end of the day, by the end of the lunch, to then also reach a little deeper and bid on items. So we tried to leverage the online platform to get people who might not be at the event, who might still be interested in supporting with buying an auction item. And we've had some fun things. So just kind of a couple of tools that maybe we hadn't been using before, and that's been successful. So the last 3 years or so, I think the last three tournaments, we've been able to bring a pretty good amount of money, around $30,000, into the foundation, and all of that goes to scholarships. And we actually have, this past year, we increased the amount of money. I don't have the exact numbers, but we've increased the amount of money that we gave to the students for scholarships this past year. I think the number, if we include some grants that were given to postgrads and things, was $55,000, and that was quite a bit more than the last few years. So it really is gratifying to be able to take the generosity of people at the fundraiser, the golf fundraiser, and then and be able to turn around and see it go to students who are off to college or trade school, or postgraduate projects. So that's been the golf tournament has been the big one.
How do you see the foundation today, and how do you see the foundation? I mean, it's been just about 60 years, and we started this conference with our keynote speaker was Ed Eusebio. I think you know of him.
I've heard of him.
Yeah. He's been around for a long time. But Ed and I go back a long ways as well. And we've had different takes on the foundation, different perspectives. But I think that's always good. I think that out of healthy debate, sometimes that's where ideas flourish. We started with the words actually of Manuel Reis, which Ed rightly mentioned was one of his mentors. And Manuel Reis in 37 years ago, was the 11th conference in Oakland, said that he believed that the Portuguese community, and it's interesting because today is when we're talking about some of the evolution, some of the changes in the Portuguese community, and we're concerned with it. Well, 37 years ago, a few of us have been talking about this for a long time, but 37 years ago, Manuel Reis was concerned with it, and he said that, and he said he believed that the Portuguese culture would continue. At that time, he actually did believe that the language might even continue, but he said that we'd have to fight like hell, and so I believe that. That indeed it's important that we continue to fight like hell, like you said. But I think it's important that we continue this work. But I think we have to look at things with a different light. And yesterday, one of our panelists on the panel that we had with different generations. Nancy, who's on the board, Nancy Nunes Cardoso, Nancy said that she believes that some of these traditions have to transition to English, but we should do this transition while we can, because if the transition is dying, then it's harder for the transition for the tradition is dying. It's harder for that transition to occur. And we talked about some communities, and even this morning, one of our guests from Santa Maria Island said exactly that. That when you talk about diasporas, we kind of need to have a different dialogue. And from his belief, as someone in the Azores, in this case in Portugal, believes that our diaspora needs to dialogue with other diasporas, needs to dialogue with the Greeks and the Armenians and the Polish, to see exactly what has transpired. Because, for example, in the Armenian community, the language is also an issue. It's been not present in a lot of Armenian homes, but they've been able to salvage other things throughout the community. So, your thoughts on the foundation, your thoughts on all of this. I know that you think about it. I know that it's important to you, and so I'd like to get your take on it.
So I think the idea would be, what can we as the foundation do to support to support the efforts of maintaining the culture and the language. I think I don't know if it's first and foremost, but I think that the job of the foundation at least should be making sure that that education is a priority for our youth and for our community, and certainly in the 60s and 70s, the idea of making bilingual education available to people who were really still learning English, new families coming, that was a need at the time. And that is really not a need now. And that's a sign of success. But education in general is still important for all of our communities, but especially our, the Portuguese American community. So I think that's among all the other things that are, the Holy Ghost parades and festas and everything. Those serve such a purpose of maintaining the awareness of the culture. And so I think the role, we don't have to, everyone doesn't have to be doing the same thing, right? Those needs are already being addressed. But the awareness of education and trying to promote the pursuit of education, no matter what the field, I think is going to be a success if we achieve that. I'd like to think it would also be still some awareness of the cultural education and the Portuguese language education. So I do think that should still be a role. Now it's getting more difficult because it's sort of a niche language, and it's not a large program at any university. Of course, Fresno State, you doing a wonderful job there, but I think it's hard to build huge programs. And then the question is, how can we leverage partnerships with other programs? Even if it's just language appreciation rather than language expertise. Other hyphenated Americans, Armenians, Portuguese, we could try to think a little bit more broadly about the experience of sharing an immigrant experience. I think there's some partnerships that we could work on, and then as the other partnerships are to leverage with the Holy Ghost societies and the youth groups within the greater Luso Fraternal, to try to bring some of the more structured educational and language programs. So the summer camp is a good example. I think it really encapsulates a lot. And Joanne Malta Weingard has done such a great job with her team through a few decades now, to invite kids to something that's fun, that has a Portuguese focus and some arts and crafts and some language, and they do some dance and sueca and things that promote the culture. But then to have it on a campus that takes kids who are, 7th, 8th graders through the, I think up until senior year of high school, to take kids who might not even be thinking about college yet and to put them on campus and make them aware of the importance of a higher degree or more advanced training. So that's a nice example, I think, even if it's not a bilingual, it's not a Portuguese language degree, perhaps, but to say this is important. thinking about your future is important. Making ongoing education a priority is important, and to do it with the background of Portuguese culture and language appreciation is what the success of that program is. So that's I think that's, I don't know if I can summarize it, but it's putting a education focus, maintaining recognition of the roots of the history of the language and culture, and if we can, still have some structure for having, you know, the actual language being taught and learned. I think are probably three main focuses of the foundation.
Good points. And I agree. I think especially at the lower levels, that's I think what some of the community schools are doing. It's more of a language appreciation than a language efficiency. You know, they learn some basic things, but language cultural appreciation. There are actually some programs that we need to tap into. Unfortunately, we don't have sometimes the resources, but there are some programs in the state of California for language appreciation that public schools can tap into funds, and Hillmar has done a good job in doing that and tapping into some of these funds, and hopefully we can have maybe even a PBBI Luso American Education Foundation kind of little workshop with friends from Hillmar that could pass this information, because sometimes some areas of the state are doing some interesting things, but then we, even with the technology, even with all the information avenues, it doesn't get to anybody.
We don't know about it.
Yeah, we don't know about him. So I've been in touch with Hilmar, and I hope that we can in the near future, in the next few months, bring that awareness and bring people together that may be in that particular community are interested in tapping onto their school district. But and it's basically a language appreciation. Besides, they do have a program, a complete program with immersion, as you know, and everything else. They're the only immersion Portuguese in California, but there are some funding. There are funds available still in public education. For how long, we don't know, because public education is going through a lot of cuts. They may be gone next year, but there are still some funds available. I think sometimes we need to tap onto that. Luís, I don't know if if you want to, and not need to, but want to, and need as well, to please join the conversation. And Bernice is on as well. I don't know if if she wants to be on, where we can see her or can, and Diane as well. If you have any comments, please add to them at any time. Luís.
Well, Brett touched on the important things. My activities in the foundation have been in the education conference, not just this one, but the many education conferences we had before. They weren't online. I'll go back not to the first ones, but work with Eduardo Zabbi and co-chairing and chairing some education conferences in San Jose. And of course, the summer camp. Until this year, I was very much involved in the language and cultural aspect of the summer camp. And one interesting thing that we were able to do with the summer camp in the relative past was getting a teacher from the Azores to come to represent Azorean culture and teach it to our students in the summer camp. And they brought all kinds of different things with them and help enliven the summer camp. That was something that was possible where the budget in the Azores was a little more prolific, but now it's more difficult to do. Summer camp has been in the hands of Joanne Malta Weingard until recently, and before that, Bill Gonçalves. So people who dedicated their energy, Joanne, last few years, so much energy, so much work to keep that going. Even now in this camp, she was involved in helping the people that were putting it together. My other activity in the foundation has been the scholarship committee, and it's good to remind people that the American Education Foundation has given many million, hundreds of thousands, over $1 million in scholarships throughout these years to students either of Portuguese American descent or students who are not Portuguese, who are studying Portuguese. So we stayed close to our bylaws and tried to support people and programs that follow those bylaws. My role is in the foundation. I've been president twice. I was chairman of the board many years. Presently, I'm vice chair of the board. I was also vice president for public relations. So I've tried to, in a way, pay back to the foundation what it did for me, because in 1974, when I was a student at Cal State Hayward doing a special major in Portuguese and a major in French and another in Spanish, I needed to have additional units to be able to get a special major in Portuguese, because we have a minor there. And I was working under Dr. Don Warren, and I was studying under him. So the Luís American Education Foundation gave me a scholarship, a grant, really, to go to Lisbon, University of Lisbon in 1974, right after the revolution. It was a very exciting time to be there. And not only did I learn a lot, but I also was able to get together 10 units that were very essential for my major in Portuguese. So I've always had this sense of gratitude towards the foundation. I think it's a fantastic organization. We always need to renew it. Brad is a breath of fresh air. He comes in with new ideas and new energy. We have people like him doing that. I feel that people like me, or in the later years of life, I need to be present to support in whatever the foundation needs, but it's important to give space to the younger people, to the people who are coming in, like Brad and others, even younger than he. And so we, as anywhere in our community, we need to renew ourselves, to bring in new blood. And there is a certain amount of prestige about being in the board of the Luís American Education Foundation, being involved. It's an organization that has a long history of presence in the community, and great relationships with Portugal, with the Azores. It's a very prestigious organization. So anyone that would like to come in, please keep in mind that we are open to everyone and everybody. Whoever wants to help the foundation, we welcome your presence. We want your ideas. We want your effort. We want your support. We want your presence in the American Education Foundation. It's essential that new blood and new generations become involved. We are attracting new people to the board and to the organization. The summer camp this year was an example of that. As I said, Joanne was leading it, for many years. She's still a lot involved with it, but she passed the baton to younger people who were able to do a wonderful job with the camp. And I always felt, as the person who was in charge of the Portuguese language and cultural activities, that I brought in things that were of value, but there are many other things, many more new ideas of things, of people that actually probably relate much better to the younger generation, second, third generations, than I do as an immigrant. So it's really important to have this openness, this open-mindedness, serve while we can, with what we can, but open the doors and the windows of our organization to new air, new blood coming in, so that we can renew ourselves and continue doing our wonderful work and support Portuguese language, Portuguese education, and Portuguese Americans in education in general. So it's an organization with a multifaceted approach, and for that we need funds, we need money. We've been lucky to have support, and Brad has been essential. Brad and Bernice, Pelicas, and their family, sisters, everybody have been essential in bringing in funds through the golf tournament, but we have other sources of income. But that's our primary source of income. With that, we are able to do activities and award scholarships and grants. So we need everybody. We need everybody's presence. We need the blood. I appeal to the new people. I appeal to the hundreds of former students that were recipients of grants and scholarships to look at the foundation. Go online, find out, if you're not a member, how you can become part of it, because we definitely need you. And the future does not reside with me or with Diniz. The future resides with the new generations coming in with their ideas, their approaches, and their energy.
Very well. Indeed. One of the things that Luís mentioned, which is something that the foundation had an issue with for, I think we need to be, I like being blunt about things, but, and that's why even yesterday or I should say Wednesday, when we had an opening session with Eduardo José, he was talking about the hospitality suite, that we call it the hostility suite. And the idea was, just to put it in context, because, as Luís says, our age is starting to show. I began not the first conference, not even the first 10 conferences. I think it was like the 12th or 13th conference when I was, but I was a journalist. I was a reporter for a radio station, Portuguese radio station. So that I went to I went to the first few conferences as a reporter, as a journalist. And so, I would question why there was, I would, give him some, Fox News questions or that kind of stuff. And so he would obviously, our relationship was rocky at that time because I was trying to get some information out of him, but it was a good relationship, I should say. But that's when we talked about the hospitality and hostility. It became because of that, because I was in the room, but I was there with a different purpose as a journalist, and so. But one of the things I'd like to get, your comments, Brad, and Luís, of course, and Bernice, if she can get on, or anybody else. That's the we have had an issue, and we've talked about this at many different meetings, getting these younger folks who have received a scholarship back with a foundation, and there's I don't think there's a secret recipe for it. If there is, we need to discover it. But it would be interesting, even especially from that point that you mentioned, Brad, earlier, which is, to promote education in general, to promote the opportunity for students to go on to college, to further their studies, if they so wish, or technical school, or wherever they want to go. And sometimes what we don't have, we do, but we don't know how to get to them, is these role models. And I have found out that at Fresno State, when I do, and Luís knows this because we used to do this at UC Berkeley when Jolinda was there. So at Fresno State, we do something called the Portuguese language students Youth Day. And when I mean the Portuguese language students, because we invite high schools that have Portuguese language programs or Portuguese clubs. Okay. And so normally the three high schools from Tulare, the one from Hanford, the one from San Jose hasn't come down because it is a bit of a drive. But Hillmar has gone, Turlock, Ceres, and a couple of other high schools are now thinking about that have Portuguese clubs, not Portuguese language. So, but this way it's for everybody. So we have a lot of Hispanic students. We have a lot of, we have African American students. We have Asian students. These are students who are taking the language. They're not necessarily Portuguese Americans, although they're probably the biggest ethnic group, but they're not, the majority. In other words, the majority would be Hispanics, Asian, Caucasian, African Americans. They're a bigger majority than the Portuguese students who are Portuguese background. However, one of the things that the students always enjoy is when we have professionals there, younger professionals, not 85 or 90-year-olds, but younger professionals in their, even sometimes as young as late 20s and early 30s and 40s, that they can relate to and they can talk to, and it hasn't been that long since they went to college. It was like 10 years ago or 8 years ago, so they remember this. And it's, to me, even at Fresno State, we have, it's a struggle getting people to go and just basically talk about it. But it's one of the things that students mostly like about the day, when I get feedback from them and through their teachers, is that panel of 4 or 5. Hey, I saw a nurse that gave me some pointers because I want to go into nursing school, or I saw a lawyer that talked about this or that. So I think that we need to do more of that, not just at this language event, but hopefully throughout the community. It'd be wonderful. And we've talked about this, Brad, I know, and probably going to talk until we're all blue in the face. But we talked about this situation of having maybe mixers or different events, or going to schools or whatever. I believe that I think it's important to have these role models, because a lot of people, don't relate to it, and it's something that they can relate if they see somebody, a Portuguese background, or in the case that we had one last couple of years ago, 2 years ago, when we started back after the pandemic, it was an Hispanic. Person who was I believe, an engineer, but who had taken Portuguese courses at the high school, and who had taken Portuguese courses also in college, and who actually he could communicate in Portuguese. And he talked about his profession. Okay. And he talked also about how it enriched him as someone who is now kind of trilingual. And he's the one that put the word kind on me, but he put, I'm kind of trilingual. And so I think thoughts on that, if you have any, Brad and José.
Sure. I think that I think that if we could find a way to engage the younger people, that would be good for the organization and good for the younger people. Now, this is not uncommon, right? How many kids are going to church because they're going with their families, and then that becomes harder to sustain. So it's not just our problem; it's a problem in general, and we're competing a lot with such a flood of social media and Insta and all this stuff, and it's a tool that we can try to use it, but it's diluted by the barrage that's coming at them. There's less in-person stuff than there ever used to be, and the online stuff and the social media stuff is just swamping them. So we have to make them want to be involved and show them the benefits. I've probably mentioned before, as far as mentor, I won't claim, I'm not saying I'm Aaliyah's mentor, my wife, but the networking of the Portuguese community was part of the reason that she and I started talking about a field of medicine. I'm a few years ahead of her. I was in medical school. She called for advice. And that happened, well, because our parents knew each other. And so much of that was part of the community when so much more of it was face-to-face and people knew each other. And people have spread out a bit. And I feel like we still want to be able to do those things. That's an important part of the organization. But trying to figure out how to do it in the 21st century is going to take a lot of expertise that I certainly don't have. I would love it if this conference, for instance, you've had thousands of people throughout the world, and if there was a handful of people that said, "Boy, if I could be involved in that, I have things to offer. I'm an educator. I think we need more educators on the board. I'm an educator. I know of different programs. How can we build the Lucy Education Foundation as a place that's sort of an umbrella organization, or a place that people know they can go to find out about the program in Hilmar, to find out who the congressperson is or the representative in the state? Maybe we can try to get more funds, to find out what the fundraiser situation is. Is there money available to support, San Jose State program? And on the board, we have to be seeking those people. And also, so for instance, there's been a couple of requests to the board in the last few years from Fresno State and San Jose State, and I hope they come from others as well. And I think we should be saying, yeah, we do have money to give, and please, also, we would like you to participate. So Diniz, you're at Fresno State and you're on the board, of course, and to have people who are the younger, nothing against you, Diniz, as people are in the language training programs, and then they would know that they have money, and we would invite their expertise and their energy, and to be able to have the Education Foundation be the place people go to network or for ideas. And you can imagine, just if you were to sort of start from scratch and say what would be great, you've got a website, people know where it is, there's links, there's a list of people who've gotten scholarships. And maybe when you get a scholarship, you say, yeah, I'll keep my name in the mix, and I'm going to give updates every 5 years of what I'm doing. And it turns out then we have a Rolodex is a very old-fashioned term, but we have a list of people who, Brad's a cardiologist. Hey, I've got an interest in healthcare field. I can contact that person. Someone else has gone into finance. Somebody else. To have a place to go and to have more of a modern network that sure is more digital and not in person like it used to be. But so there's resources for the education, for the language and the culture, and also to make people want to do it when they're in their 20s. Building a career is to say, hey, I may actually be able to get an internship or a mentor in a career I'm interested in. I feel like that's the kind of thing we need to offer. And when we have our fundraisers, that's what I have in mind, is how can we grow it? And so that's my ask to people watching, is if this kind of thing is interesting, both from the cultural standpoint and language, but also just in general, having a supportive place to mentor the youth, we'd love some help.
From my part, Brad, I'm only 45, for your information. But older. Or as a friend of mine told me the other day, when Hey, you said 65 is the new 45. I said, no, it isn't. I can feel those extra years on there. Yeah, indeed, it would be. That's a very good point. I've always thought about that, and I said this on this board before you were on the board. It was great when I was 45 years old and I was the youngest guy. I thought it was, oh, this is great. I'm 42, I think it was at the time, and I'm the youngest guy on the board. But when I was 52, it was very kind of scary, and so things. I'm sure I'm glad things have changed. But it does need. We do need to kind of focus. That would be very, I think, a good thing for the foundation, and more importantly for the community, for the diaspora in California, to be kind of. We don't have a data center. We don't have a place we can go to. We really don't. I mean, it's just, Palcas has a little bit of a the center when it comes to, and actually good job, but it's also limited because of their limited funds as well for the national basis. But if we want to have something only for California, we don't have a good database, and then we don't share things with each other, which that's a problem. I mean, the other day someone called me and said to me, a government official from Portugal, related to Portugal, said, "I want to talk to you about the California Portuguese American Coalition. I know you have a list of Luso electors, as they call them. So Portuguese Americans who've been elected. I mean, our list is not complete by any means because people have to self-identify. How do I know that someone's last name is Hernandez and he's not Portuguese or she's not Portuguese? They can have a Hispanic last name, but they can be Portuguese. We saw that. We see that all the time. I see that in my classrooms, and so or a Caucasian name or Anglo-Saxon name and be Portuguese background. So they have to self-identify. But I said, he said, how can I, I said, we have a list. I can give it to you. You will? I said, well, yeah, I don't care. No, I mean, anybody can have the list. If you want to list the list we have, it's not perfect. But we do have 142 names on there and addresses. So that's something that we can share with Luso as well. And I think, Luso can upload, because the idea is it doesn't make any difference who gets it. We don't want that list just there for nobody to see it. If it can be a resource, if people can look and say, oh, hey, Glenn County, which is the case. Glenn County has a Portuguese American who's on the county board of supervisors. Maybe he can help us with this issue that Portuguese Hall A, Y, or B is having. And so I believe that we do need to get maybe Luso should be that organization, Luso Education Foundation, that has this database, and then we can share things with each other a little bit more because we're very territorial, right? Very Portuguese, unfortunately, very Azorian, especially also but it's the same thing in mainland Portugal. There's Minho and there's Algarve and there's this and there's that, and so we're a bit too territorial. But both of you, do you see the need for a database and could Luso kind of spearhead that?
Yeah,
Wonderful.
of course. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yes, we need that. We need a lot of things. We need renewal. We need to do things differently. We need to have more and more people who are already born in this country, who have a different view of things. And of course, this idea of exchanging information, of connections, it's really more receptive. It's better received by the newer generations because, as you said, the old folks tend to be more, not us, but many people tend to be very territorial in terms of their organizations. We see that in terms of philharmonics and all these things where people could work together, but they don't because they associate the formation and continuity of their organizations with particular people. And so, yes, we need to share. We need to be more global within our California and our diaspora in the United States. We're still very local. Talking in general, Luso American Education Foundation is actually, global in nature. It's not just in California. It's actually all over the United States. And we award scholarships not just for Californians. We do it for students in other parts of the country. But yeah, we do need to become more open in terms of how we share information, also how we receive people and information. There was an idea a while back to make the Luso American Education Board more of a national board. It's difficult to do when you have meetings that are, in presential, in the presence of the people rather than online. So these are challenges that we have, but it's easier for the younger generations to resolve these things because their concept of time is also different. Those of us who are immigrants, we tend to have this old-fashioned concept of time where we sit down, we talk, we sometimes even argue about things. The new generation has very little time for that. They are very much into projects, into accomplishing things and moving on to other things. So information is essential. Exchange information from one group to the other, see what one is doing, how they can help each other. And I think that the new generation hopefully is more open to help each organization helping each other rather than being so territorial. So yeah, these are great ideas. We have to modernize, and I as I said before, we need new blood to be able to do that. Of course, some of us like you, Diniz, you have great modern, up-to-date ideas, and it's great that he's throwing these ideas out there. We do need new blood to implement all of these things, and it's a challenge. And one more time to the people out there who are young and have energy and interest. Do not feel like you're an outsider. We want you in. We want you to become a member of the foundation. We want you to join the advisory board, the board, all these things. I personally, I'm a vice chairman of the board. I will gladly give up my position for new blood to come in to the vice chairman of the board because I've done this many years. I have nothing to gain personally except the idea that I'm doing my duty, and I prefer that somebody else would do my duty and do it better.
We've done a couple of things to try to engage the youth, and so there is I think $50 a year per individual membership to the Education Foundation, and it helps support programs. So a couple of years ago, we discussed on the board and then committed to this that when every student who gets a scholarship has 5 years of complimentary membership. I made the argument to the board, it doesn't really cost anything because these generally aren't people who are ready to, they're not going to be spending $50 a year to join anyway, right? It's not like it's an opportunity cost. And the idea is that by trying to make them they feel like they belong to something, we can hope that some of them will stay engaged. And I think that there can be, kind of a couple of, I won't call it a carrot, it's not a carrot and a stick, but it's, we could include, as we are very appropriately increasing the dollar amounts of our awards. I think the limit, the year prior was, or years prior was maybe 4,000. That was the big one. We raised that this year to 6,000. We've given more of the larger scholarships. That's how we doubled or tripled the amount this year. But I would like to see us do something like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, I got a grant from Luís to go to Brazil, and I spent a month down there doing a medical rotation with some Brazilian medical students. It was a great experience, and I felt obliged. I was told, well, you're going to come to the annual meeting and talk about your experience, and I was nervous, and I wrote a little poem, and I spoke, some Portuguese words. It was a big deal to me. Not just getting the grant, but also the requirement and the privilege, the invitation of coming back and talking about it. That was engagement. And I think that when we give a $6,000, if we make it $8,000, that's a pretty big number, and it's totally good. It's fine for us, and would help the students feel engaged to say, you are expected to come back and give a report to us. And maybe it's on Zoom because they're down at, they're studying somewhere else and it's a long way to come. But we want there to be some feedback to close the loop. And it might feel like a requirement and nobody wants to impose things on people. On the other hand, I think it makes kids feel engaged. It reminds them that they do have that payback. That's why most of us are doing this. So I don't think we've done as much of that the last few years. We're proud that we can give the kids the money, and then I think it's they go on with their lives as people do. But I think to try to pull them back, in part by requiring it, but also the invitation is very meaningful. And then those people, down the road, Bernice asked them to join the board, and that's what I did. So that's the way the organization grows. So if there's people on the line who've gotten scholarships the last few years or 10 years ago, that there is an open invitation from the Education Foundation to join us and to give back and come in with these energies and ideas. I think that's a great plug for this conference that you've put together, Diniz, is to try to pull people in to help out. We need it.
Indeed. Well, if I think that's a good way to end it, actually. Bring people in, bring young people in, young people, old people, anybody. I mean, just come on in. And José Luís, sometimes maybe it's a Valley thing, and I'll probably get tons of emails, about the Valley thing. But sometimes some of our younger Portuguese Americans are a bit too territorial. I see them a lot in my classes, and I call them out on that territorialism. And so it's not. I think it's not a generation issue. I think it's more of a cultural issue that sometimes will go from generation to generation. I see it, unfortunately, in young Portuguese Americans, territorial, nationalistic, some of the things that some of us and other older generations have fought for a long. And part of it, of course, has to do, political climates, changes, attitudes and people's experiences as well. But I think that's a good way to end it. Thank you. Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Luís, for being part of this organization. We are going to end the conference here. I don't know. Bernice is on. I can hear her. Are you there?
Yeah. Okay. Hi there. I've been listening very quietly and enjoying it. I mean, you've touched on so many important issues. And well, earlier when you were talking, I was thinking back to my childhood experience, being active in the Portuguese youth councils and things like that. And I remember kids in school, if you said you were Portuguese, they didn't know what that was. It was like, what? Where's this country? They didn't even know where Portugal was. So I think we have come a long way in promoting our culture. I mean, now Portugal is like the destination vacation for just about everybody. My niece is going there tomorrow. She's never been to Portugal, and she's half Mexican. And she picked Portugal to go to. And I thought, wow, okay, she really wasn't raised that much as far as my children are concerned. My niece wasn't raised as much in the Portuguese community as they were, So it is so, I feel really good about that as far as our culture is being promoted. Doesn't have to do necessarily with any organization, but it's just the way. Why is it happening? I don't know. But Portugal is a really recognized country now. And along with that is a culture. People are more interested now in our culture than they were when I was a kid, So, and then the other thing I thought I had was when we're talking about getting people in and getting them interested in Luso, for example, sometimes it's just as simple as asking. I mean, with Brad, I asked him and he was willing and ready. And as I noticed that on the other side where I'm a sales agent for Luso, I've run across experiences where people have been involved in our activities, have participated. They weren't members because nobody ever asked them. It's like, what? It's just kind of surprising. Asked them and they said, yeah, we're ready. We want to join. No one ever asked us to. So, with all the social media out there and everything that you have access to, sometimes it just goes down to asking. That's my thoughts on this.
No, I agree. I do. And you stated, of course, a case in point with Brad. But I think sometimes we don't ask, or sometimes we say, "Oh, young people don't want this," or "Young people don't want that." We don't know until we ask. And I think that we do need to get more involvement, and especially even if they cannot serve on the board, but if they can become members.
Members. Yeah.
If they can just promote the organization within their own community. We can do some things online. We can do some things in person. But I think it would be a big deal for Luso American Education Foundation if we could indeed loop in, as Brad said, the folks who get a scholarship to kind of come back to us and talk about their experiences.
There needs to be more emphasis on that.
Doing a lot of them. We don't even know if they've a degree, if they did a master's, if they're in a different field, and we can talk about it. Hey, I went in to be a teacher and I came out, an engineer, or vice versa. So it would be very interesting, and I think supportive for other young people if we find that out. Brad, you're going to say something,
and especially just that so when I did this, I came back to the board and gave a report. I could imagine the hard part is getting the critical mass of interest and people to attend. But I could imagine the student who's, they're at the end of their 5-year complimentary membership. They've hopefully finished college by now. They're starting their career and they're coming back to report. And it's not just the grown-up members, the board members in attendance. It's maybe that year's crop of applicants who are, I wouldn't say expected, but boy, you show your face and you maybe are more likely to get the $8,000 scholarship than the one that, there's like a little bit of self-interest to attend something, even if it's online. And part of the content, you need coming up with content like what you've done on this conference is huge and so difficult to come up with content that people would perceive as valuable. But if you can gather an audience of young people who are starting out, of getting their, applying for their scholarship, and you've required, I'll say the word required, the 5 years ago student to come and give a report on what they've done. And all of a sudden you've started a dialogue and you've created a place that's considered valuable, where all it takes is a couple of people to say, hey, that sounds interesting. And after that meeting, give a call. Or Brad says, yeah, hey, that sounds like what I did. And if anybody needs advice, that's a dialogue that can get started. And those, I think those are the ideas that we need. We have to find a way to engage the young people. And we need manpower, woman power to get this done.
Indeed. Well, thank all three of you so much. Thank you to those of you at home. Thank you to those that are attending here as well. Thanks for your participation. Thanks to all of our panelists. We've had everyone from southern Brazil to the Azores to Madeira to mainland Portugal to Canada to the East Coast of the United States as well. There's been a lot of content. It's all recorded. We are going to polish it and put it up on our PBBI-Fresno State YouTube channel. And also in our library. It'll be archived in our library as part of our oral history program, and that's great because indeed, we don't know what the future will bring. But if someone 50 years from now, 60 years from now, will only Brad and Bernice will be alive, they're too young, but the rest of us will be gone. But 50, 60 years from now, if people want to look at what was debated at the Luso American Education Foundation Conference, I think the online serves that purpose. We have a registration of it. We have this is being recorded as well. So we have we have the transcripts that will be done once they're archived in our library, where people can just look for things. As you know, as a researcher, you look for things. You don't want to listen to 3 hours of talk. And the same thing, but the same thing online. It offers also an opportunity for those to watch it. And it's amazing. And to me, it's amazing because, for example, one of the most watched presentations thus far was the discussion that José Luís and I had with Andrea Muniz de Souza, who is the president of the AEA, the Azorean Immigrant Association, about some different things that we talked about and civil society being involved. And unbelievably, we have had almost 3,000 people watch just views just on that one. And a big difference. 1,500 people yesterday morning, and maybe there were some controversial parts in there, so people heard about it when they watched it and to see it. It's in English, by the way. And so from 1,500 to 2,900 in a little over 24 hours. So it's a way to reach people and for this to be archived, because I think this is oral history. What we're discussing here today, who knows? I mean, we were looking by going to a piece written by Humberto Freitas 37 years ago for the Diário de Notícias newspaper is how I found a quote from Manuel Reis, okay, that he had said, fight and fight like hell. And so I believe that, it was important for us to kind of know, I think it's important for us to know that 37 years ago, Manuel Reis had already this dilemma, are we able, I think we'll be able to continue it, but we need to fight. So these issues are not new issues. We just have to look for newer solutions because some have worked and some have not. On behalf of PBBI, thanks to Luz America for believing us for the 5th year. It's probably going to be our last because I think maybe we want to transfer now back to in person, and that's a different animal, by the way. Not that this one is not any work, but it's a big difference. An in-person conference, as Luís knows, and I do, and Bernice was involved in a few as well, and so it's a bit of a different perspective and a different way to handle things. But that's a debate that I think the board has to have in the next few months and decide, does it want to go back to an in-person? Does it want to go to a hybrid version? We've done some hybrid things at Fresno State, and they're not always the best. So it seems like sometimes one way or another, or an in-person activity which has been done at Fresno State with one or two guests coming in through Zoom because of travel expenses or whatever, they cannot make it. And that is one way to do that as well. But it's something that the board needs to decide. We've been more than happy to do it at Fresno State the last 5 years because there was no possibility to do it, obviously, in 2020 or 2021 in person. And then the board decided to continue in 2023 and 2024. And so it's been a pleasure doing it. We'll see what happens. PBBI is here to work with the board as much as it can because it's important also for us to be partners with other organizations. So on behalf of Luís, myself, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Bernice, for all of your help as well, for your leadership and for all of the things that both of you have done, all of the different projects that you get yourselves involved in for the Luz American Education Foundation. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks to all the presenters. Thanks to all who were online or who were here on Zoom. And on behalf of the 48th Annual Luz American Education Foundation Conference, Roots and Routes, constructing or building the identities for the Portuguese community in the Portuguese diaspora in California and our connections with the Lusophone world, which, by the way, we had an interesting conversation, very interesting, with 2 or 3 points that are going to be part of our action items from the Brazilian member of our community that was part of this of a panel, Valeria Sasser. And so I think we still have lots of opportunities, lots of challenges. But I think let's just end with Manuel Reis' word. Let's fight like hell. Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Diniz.
Here.